An orphan girl thought she was just returning a lost wallet. But what happened next shocked even the CEO who owned it. Stay with us, because the twist in this story will leave you speechless. The evening sky was painted in shades of orange and deep purple, the kind of colors that often promise a storm before the night. The wind carried with it the scent of dust, mixed with the faint aroma of street food from the nearby stalls. The town was alive with people rushing home, children running in the narrow lanes, and the honking of rickshaws filling the air. Among this noise, walking quietly with her head lowered, was Aisha, a young orphan girl barely 17. Her thin frame and worn-out sandals spoke volumes of her hardships. Her dress, once a bright blue, had faded with time and was patched in places where the cloth had torn. She clutched a small cloth bag against her chest, inside of which were a few coins she had earned that day from washing clothes and clearing dishes at the tea stall. Her stomach growled softly, reminding her she hadn't eaten since morning, but Aisha was used to ignoring hunger. It had become a companion, a silent shadow she carried with her. She could still hear her mother's voice in her memory, even though she had passed away years ago. "Never steal, my daughter. Even if you are starving, keep your hands clean, because honesty will protect you when nothing else can." These words, simple yet powerful, were carved deep inside her. Whenever the temptation of food or money crossed her path, her mother's voice rose louder than her hunger. As she walked down the muddy road, she avoided stepping into the puddles created by the earlier rain. The bus stop near the edge of town came into view, a small shelter with a crooked tin roof, its paint peeling away. People had already gathered there, some holding umbrellas, others huddling in corners, eager to reach home before the night deepened. Aisha stopped near the edge of the road, adjusting her bag, when something unusual caught her eye. There, lying on the ground just a few feet away, was a black leather wallet. It looked new, polished, almost shining under the dim light of the flickering street lamp. For a moment, her breath caught in her throat. She looked around quickly. Had someone dropped it? Did anyone notice? People were busy. No one seemed to care. Slowly, cautiously, she bent down and picked it up. The leather felt smooth in her hands, heavy with something inside. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Her eyes widened. Inside was a thick stack of cash, crisp notes folded neatly, along with credit cards tucked in their slots. There was also a small photo tucked behind one of the cards, a family picture of a man in a suit with two children smiling beside him. Her heart began to beat faster. This was no ordinary wallet. Whoever it belonged to must be rich, maybe very rich. She could not even imagine holding so much money at once. The thought hit her sharply. This amount could feed her for months, maybe even change her life. She could buy new clothes, eat properly, perhaps even rent a small room, instead of sleeping in corners of shops when no one noticed. For a few seconds, the temptation pulled her strongly. She glanced at the cash again. It was enough to silence her hunger, to free her from the humiliation of begging for work every day. Her hands clutched the wallet tightly, and she closed her eyes, battling with the voice inside her. Then her mother's words echoed again, louder this time. "If it's not yours, don't take it. Even if you have nothing, your honesty is everything." Tears welled up in her eyes. She whispered softly to herself, "No, this is not mine." Her lips quivered as she looked up at the darkening sky. "Mother, I will not let you down." She sat down on the broken bench under the bus stop, holding the wallet close to her chest. Her mind was filled with questions. Who did this belong to? How could she find the owner? Would they even believe her if she said she hadn't taken anything? She was a poor girl, dirty clothes, empty stomach. People never trusted someone like her. The bus arrived, people pushed and shoved to get inside, but Aisha remained seated, lost in her thoughts. She opened the wallet again, this time looking carefully. Among the cards, she found a business card with bold letters, Mr. Zayan Malik, CEO, Malik Enterprises. She whispered the name as if testing how it sounded. A CEO? She had no idea what that truly meant, but from the grand title, she guessed it was someone important. Her hands trembled more now. This was dangerous. If she returned it, people might accuse her of stealing. If she kept it, guilt would never leave her. She bit her lip, staring at the name again and again. Finally, as the night grew colder, she stood up. Her decision was made. She slipped the wallet safely inside her cloth bag and began walking toward the small shack she used as shelter. Each step felt heavy, but her heart was lighter knowing she had chosen the right path. That night, as she lay awake staring at the tin roof above her, the rain began again. She hugged her bag tightly, praying silently. God, tomorrow I will find him. Please help me return this. Please let them believe me. Her voice cracked as she said it. The wallet lay beside her, untouched, shining in the dim moonlight. She had no idea that this single choice, this act of honesty, would soon change her life forever. The morning sun rose slowly, casting golden light through the cracks of the tin roof where Aisha had slept. She sat up, rubbing her tired eyes, her body stiff from the hard floor. Beside her lay the wallet, its polished leather gleaming faintly in the sunlight. For a few seconds, she just stared at it, her stomach turning with nerves. Today was the day she had promised herself she would return it, no matter what happened. But fear coiled inside her like a snake. What if people accused her of theft? What if this CEO thought she had already stolen something? She clutched the wallet against her chest and whispered, "I will be honest. That's all I have." It was her mother's voice she was repeating, the words that had carried her through every difficult moment. The town was slowly waking up as she stepped out onto the dusty road. Shopkeepers pulled up their shutters, vendors arranged fruits and vegetables, and children ran barefoot towards school, their laughter echoing through the narrow lanes. Aisha walked past them quietly, her faded blue dress brushing against her knees, her bag slung over her thin shoulder. Her first challenge was figuring out where to find the man whose name was printed on the business card, Mr. Zayn Malik, CEO, Malik Enterprises. She had no idea where Malik Enterprises was. She couldn't even read English properly, but the bold letters were clear enough for her to recognize. She asked a fruit seller if he had heard of the company. He looked at her suspiciously, eyeing her dirty clothes, and shrugged. "Big company, somewhere in the city," he said dismissively, as if someone like her could never belong there. She moved on, asking a rickshaw driver next. The man raised his eyebrows when he saw the business card. "You know this man?" "He's very rich. His office is in the tallest building near the market square." Then he gave her a long look, half curious, half doubtful. "Why are you asking, girl?" Her fingers tightened around the bag as she quickly shook her head. Just needed to know." She hurried away before he could ask more. The idea of going to a tall building in the heart of the city made her nervous. She had never been inside a proper office in her life. She imagined polished floors, glass walls, and people in fine clothes. How would they even let someone like her inside? But she knew she had no other choice. With shaky hands, she flagged down another rickshaw. She offered the driver the small amount of coins she had, hoping it would be enough. He frowned, counted them, then sighed. "It's not enough, but get in. I'll take you halfway." She nodded gratefully and climbed in, holding the wallet tightly in her lap. The ride felt long and overwhelming. The farther they went, the more the streets widened and the buildings grew taller. The air smelled different here. Less of dust and smoke, more of perfume and fresh paint. She saw men in suits, women in elegant dresses, cars gleaming as if they were made of silver. It felt like another world entirely. When the driver finally stopped, pointing toward a towering glass building that seemed to touch the clouds, her breath caught. "That's the place," he said, wiping his forehead. She stepped out slowly, staring up at the skyscraper, its windows shining under the morning sun. People in crisp clothes walked briskly in and out, holding briefcases and talking on phones. She felt small, invisible, like an intruder in a place where she didn't belong. Her heart pounded as she walked toward the entrance. 2 security guards stood there, tall and intimidating. She hesitated, clutching her bag. When she finally gathered the courage to approach, one of them raised a hand. "Stop! Where are you going?" Her voice trembled as she spoke. I need to return something. To Mr. Zayn Malik. I found his wallet." The guards exchanged skeptical looks. One of them folded his arms. His wallet? You expect us to believe that? Where did you even get it? Her cheeks flushed red with shame. I didn't steal it, she said quickly, her words rushing out. I found it on the road. I just want to give it back. She pulled the wallet carefully from her bag, holding it out with trembling hands. The guard's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the expensive wallet, but his suspicion didn't fade. Wait here, he signaled to another guard who went inside with the wallet. Aisha stood frozen at the entrance, feeling the stares of people walking past. Some looked at her with pity, others with disdain, as if she was some beggar trying to sneak her way into a world that wasn't hers. Minutes felt like hours. She could hear her heart beating in her ears. Finally, the second guard returned with the wallet in his hands. Follow me, he said curtly. Relief washed over her, but it was quickly replaced by nervousness again as she stepped inside the grand building. The marble floors gleamed so brightly she could see her reflection in them. Chandeliers sparkled above her, and the air smelled faintly of roses. She walked awkwardly, afraid her old sandals might leave dirty marks on the pristine floor. The guard led her to a lift, and soon she was whisked up to the top floor. When the doors opened, she stepped into a wide hallway lined with glass walls. At the end stood a large office with wooden doors, carved and polished. The guard opened the door and gestured for her to go inside. Her legs felt weak, but she stepped forward. Behind a massive desk sat a man in a dark suit, his hair neatly combed, his presence commanding. His eyes lifted from the papers in front of him and landed on her. For a second she froze. This was him, Mr. Zayan Malik, the man in the photograph inside the wallet. The CEO, the owner of everything around her. The guard placed the wallet on the desk. Sir, she says she found this and came to return it. Zayan's eyes flickered from the wallet to Aisha, then back to the wallet. His face was unreadable. Slowly, he opened it and checked inside, pulling out the cash, the cards, and the photograph. Everything was still there. His eyebrows lifted slightly, but he remained silent for a moment, studying her with sharp eyes. Aisha's hands were clenched together in front of her. I didn't take anything, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It was lying on the road. I thought you would need it back. The room was silent except for the ticking of a clock. Zayan leaned back in his chair, one hand resting under his chin, as if trying to understand what kind of girl would return such a treasure untouched. Finally, he spoke, his voice deep and calm. Do you know how many people would have walked away with this and never looked back? Yet you came all the way here. Her eyes filled with tears, but she stood firm. My mother taught me never to take what isn't mine. Even if I have nothing. Zayan's gaze softened for the first time. Something stirred in him, though he didn't show it fully. He nodded slowly. You've done something many wouldn't dare. Tell me your name. Aisha, she whispered. The CEO leaned forward, tapping his fingers lightly on the desk. Aisha, I won't forget that name. What neither of them knew was that this meeting, born out of chance and honesty, was about to intertwine their lives in ways Aisha could never have imagined. Zayan Malik leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes still fixed on the thin, trembling girl standing before him. The polished wood of his office desk reflected the morning sun that streamed in through the wide glass windows behind him. Aisha's faded dress and worn sandals looked almost out of place in this spotless room, filled with wealth and power. She stood stiff, clutching the strap of her bag tightly, her eyes lowered in both fear and humility. The silence stretched between them, only broken by the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Zayan tapped the wallet gently with his fingers, his mind spinning. Everything was there, the cash, the cards, the photograph, not a single note missing. For a man like him, who dealt daily with deception, business tricks, and betrayal even from trusted partners, this was almost unbelievable. At last, he broke the silence. So, Aisha, he said slowly, tasting her name as if it was something unusual, you really didn't take anything from this wallet? Her eyes shot up wide with sincerity, though her lips trembled. No, sir. I only wanted to give it back. I thought you must be worried. Zayan studied her face carefully. There was no hesitation in her tone, no flicker of guilt in her eyes. She was telling the truth. Yet a part of him, the part that had grown hardened in the ruthless world of business, refused to accept things so easily. He'd seen too much dishonesty to trust a stranger at first glance. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk. "Do you know how much money is in here?" he asked, opening the wallet and pulling out the thick bundle of notes. Her eyes widened, and she quickly looked away. "I didn't count," she whispered. Zayan smirked slightly. "Most people would have. Many wouldn't have returned it at all. Do you realize you could have lived comfortably for months with this amount? Perhaps even longer, considering..." His gaze flicked down to her tattered clothes. "Your situation." Shame burned her cheeks, but she lifted her chin just a little. "Comfort doesn't come from stolen money. My mother always told me, if you lose your honesty, you lose yourself." Her words made Zayan pause. He felt an unexpected twinge in his chest, as if someone had just touched a hidden wound. For a second, he saw his late mother's face in his memory, recalling how she had once scolded him for lying as a child. He quickly pushed the thought aside, hiding his emotions behind his calm mask. Still, he wanted to be sure. He decided to test her. "Very well," he said finally, placing the wallet back on the desk. "If you truly believe in honesty, then prove it." Aisha blinked, confused. "Prove it?" "Yes." Zayan stood up, towering over her. His suit was perfectly tailored, his presence commanding. "I want you to come with me. I'll give you a task. If you succeed, I'll know you are truly as honest as you claim." Fear flickered in her eyes, but she nodded. "I'll do whatever you say, sir." Without another word, he picked up his phone and called his assistant. "Prepare the car. We're leaving." Moments later, Aisha found herself walking beside Zayan through the grand lobby of the building. Heads turned as employees noticed their CEO with a poor girl in tow. Some whispered, others stared openly. Aisha felt every eye burn into her back, but she kept walking, her head low. Outside, a sleek black car waited. The driver opened the door, and Zayan gestured for her to get in. She hesitated, then climbed in, clutching her bag tightly. The leather seats felt too soft, too rich beneath her. She sat stiffly, afraid even to move. The car pulled away, gliding smoothly through the streets of the city. Aisha looked out of the window, her eyes wide at the tall buildings and glittering shops she had never seen so closely before. Zayan, on the other hand, sat silently beside her, observing her reactions. Finally, after a long drive, the car stopped outside a crowded market. Vendors shouted, bargaining filled the air, and the aroma of food drifted from the stalls. Zayan turned to her. "Here's the task. I'll give you some money. Buy whatever you need for yourself. Clothes, food, anything. Spend it all if you wish." He pulled out several crisp notes and handed them to her. Aisha stared at them as though they were burning her fingers. "For me?" she asked uncertainly. "Yes," Zayan said firmly. "But there's a condition. I'll be watching. If you spend it selfishly, I'll know your honesty was only an act. But if you use it wisely, then I'll believe you." Aisha hesitated, her mind racing. She could buy food. Her stomach growled at the very thought. She could buy a new dress, maybe a blanket for the cold nights. But as she looked around, her eyes fell on a thin boy at the corner of the street, barefoot, his hands outstretched as he begged for scraps. Her heart clenched. She knew that pain too well. Taking a deep breath, she looked at Zayan. "I'll try." He nodded, watching closely as she stepped out into the bustling market. The CEO followed at a distance, his sharp eyes never leaving her. The first thing Aisha did was walk to a food stall. The aroma of steaming bread and curry made her mouth water, and for a second she nearly ordered something for herself. But then she glanced back at the boy, still sitting hopelessly by the roadside. Without hesitation, she bought 2 plates of food and carried them over to him. The boy's eyes lit up when she placed the plate in front of him. "For me?" he asked in disbelief. She smiled softly. "Eat. You need it more than I do." Zayan, watching from afar, felt something stir inside him again. He had expected her to think of herself first, but she hadn't. Next, Aisha went to a small shop selling blankets. She picked one, not for herself, but for an old woman sleeping under a broken cart nearby. The shopkeeper asked if she wanted it wrapped, but she shook her head and hurried over to the woman. She gently draped the blanket over her frail body, whispering a prayer for her. By the time she returned to the car, she had spent most of the money, not on herself, but on others. The only thing she kept was a single piece of bread she had bought at the end, which she wrapped carefully in paper. Zayan raised an eyebrow as she climbed back into the car. "So what did you buy for yourself?" She held up the bread, almost embarrassed. "Just this. I'll eat it tonight." For a moment, Zayan said nothing. He simply stared at her, his mind unable to process what he had just witnessed. He had set the test expecting her to fail, or at least to split her spending between herself and others. But instead, she had thought only of strangers, giving away what could have made her life a little easier. His chest tightened again. This girl was different. She was not pretending. She was genuinely selfless. As the car drove back through the city, silence filled the space between them again. But this time, it was a different kind of silence. Not suspicion, but quiet reflection. Zayan found himself thinking of his own life, of all the times he had walked past people in need without a second glance. He had built an empire, but at what cost? Finally, he broke the silence. "Aisha," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight she didn't yet understand. "You've taught me something today." She looked at him, confused. I don't understand, sir." "You will," he replied, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. Soon enough. What Aisha didn't know was that this test and her actions had just opened a door that would change her life forever. The hospital room was filled with a hushed stillness, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of machines and the occasional soft shuffle of a nurse's shoes in the corridor outside. The dim light from the corner lamp spread a warm glow across the pale walls, casting elongated shadows that seemed to sway slightly with every flicker. On the bed, the girl lay motionless, her delicate frame hidden beneath crisp white sheets. Her chest rose and fell in slow, measured intervals, sustained not by her own strength, but by the gentle hum of the ventilator at her side. The tubes and wires surrounding her gave her the appearance of fragility, yet there was a strange air of resilience about her, as though somewhere deep within she was fighting her own silent battle. Beside her, the diplomat sat in a chair, his tall frame hunched over with fatigue. His once polished suit was now wrinkled, his tie loosened and his face drawn with worry. He had not left her side since that day, the day she collapsed after returning his wallet. The image was carved into his memory, her thin hands trembling as she handed it back, her eyes faintly glowing with a mysterious depth, and then her body giving way like a withered leaf. He hadn't known her name, her story, or where she had come from, but something in her act of honesty had pierced through the armor he had built over years of diplomacy and politics. Now, as he looked at her fragile form, a strange guilt gnawed at his conscience. Why had fate placed her in such suffering? His mind wandered back to his own daughter, lost years ago in a tragic accident. The memory was still raw, and seeing this girl, lying helpless before him, stirred emotions he had long buried. He had told himself he would never let anyone close enough to reopen that wound, yet here he was, feeling the same protective pull, the same fierce desire to shield this fragile soul from the world's cruelty. He reached out instinctively, taking her limp hand into his own. Her skin was cold but soft, and though she could not respond, he whispered, "You're not alone anymore. Not while I'm here." Doctors had explained to him that she was in a coma, her body shutting down from exhaustion, malnutrition, and a trauma they could not fully understand. Yet unlike most comatose patients, her brain activity was unusual, fluctuating patterns that puzzled even the most seasoned specialists. Sometimes her eyelids flickered, her lips quivered as if trying to form words, and faint electrical surges rippled through her body as though she was caught in two worlds, one visible, one hidden. The diplomat often wondered if she was trapped in a dream, fighting battles he could never see, calling out for someone who might never hear her. He spent hours speaking to her, sharing stories of his life, recounting the day she had returned his wallet, telling her how that small act had reminded him of humanity's forgotten kindness. He confessed things he had never admitted aloud, that wealth and power had left him empty, that his success in politics felt hollow compared to the simple warmth of his daughter's laughter. Sometimes he imagined she could hear him, that somewhere deep inside her stillness, his words were weaving threads of hope around her. One evening, as the rain pattered against the window, he noticed something unusual. Her fingers twitched against his palm, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement, but enough to make his heart race. He leaned forward, his breath catching. "Can you hear me? If you can, squeeze my hand," he pleaded. But the movement did not repeat. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was aware of him, that his presence mattered. That night, he promised her aloud, "If you wake up, I'll make sure you never have to suffer again. You've already saved me in ways you don't know." The hospital staff began whispering about the girl. Some said her resilience was uncanny, that patients in her condition rarely showed such flickers of response. Others noticed the diplomat's devotion and were moved by it. For a man of influence and power to sit hour after hour by the side of a nameless, homeless girl, there was something deeply human about it, something that touched even the most hardened hearts. Yet beyond the walls of the hospital, questions lingered. Who was she really? Why had she been living on the streets with no trace of family or identity? And why did her medical scans reveal anomalies not entirely explainable by science? Cells regenerating faster than normal, a body that seemed simultaneously fragile and strong. These mysteries hovered in the air, unspoken but heavy. The diplomat wondered if fate had placed her in his path for a reason, if perhaps there was something extraordinary about her existence. In the quiet hours of the night, he often drifted into uneasy sleep in the chair beside her bed. Sometimes he dreamed of her walking through fields of light, calling his name, reaching out with eyes that held galaxies within them. He would wake with a start, his heart pounding, unsure if it was just his imagination or some unexplainable connection forming between them. When dawn, as the first rays of sunlight crept into the room, he thought he saw tears glistening at the corner of her closed eyes. He brushed them gently away, his chest tightening with emotion. "I don't know where you come from or what you've been through," he whispered, his voice thick, "but I'll be here when you open your eyes. I'll be the first thing you see." As days turned into weeks, he grew more determined. He arranged for the best specialists, insisted on daily tests, and even brought in researchers who had dealt with rare neurological conditions. Yet no matter how advanced the science, they could not explain her survival. Each passing day, she lingered between two worlds, as though her spirit was on a journey only she could undertake. The diplomat's life outside the hospital faded into the background. Meetings were postponed, responsibilities delegated, and he began to lose interest in the endless cycle of politics and negotiation. All that mattered now was the girl lying before him, the fragile yet unyielding spark that had entered his world without warning. In her silence, she had given him a purpose again, and in his watchfulness, he believed he was offering her a reason to return. The room became a sanctuary of sorts, a place where the world's noise could not intrude. Flowers adorned the windowsill, brought by nurses who had grown fond of the silent patient. A small music player hummed gentle melodies, filling the air with calm. And always there was the diplomat, holding her hand, speaking to her, waiting for the day when her eyes would flutter open and meet his. Though he did not know it yet, the bond between them was not merely chance. It was destiny, woven in threads far older and deeper than he could imagine. And as she lingered in her silent slumber, her spirit wandered between realms, gathering the strength for the moment she would awaken and forever alter the course of his life. The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the occasional whisper of wind pressing against the hospital windows. The city outside moved on with its chaos, cars rushing, lights flickering, people chasing lives they thought mattered. But inside the small room, time had stilled into something fragile. The girl remained on the bed, her body unmoving, her spirit wandering somewhere unseen, yet the air around her carried an unusual tension, as though something profound was on the verge of unfolding. The machines hummed softly, tracing her heartbeat like a delicate thread between existence and oblivion. The diplomat sat as he always did, a silent guardian by her side. His eyes were tired, yet there was a sharpness in them that revealed his mind was alive, restless, watching her every breath. He had grown accustomed to the stillness of her form, but lately he had begun noticing strange occurrences, subtle flickers of light in the room, faint vibrations in the air, shadows that did not belong. At first, he dismissed them as tricks of exhaustion, the illusions of a man who had slept too little and cared too much. But the more they repeated, the harder it was to ignore. That evening something extraordinary happened. As he clasped her cold hand in his, he felt not just the faint twitch of her fingers, but a surge of warmth, sudden and pulsing, like a current of energy flowing into him. He gasped, his eyes darting to her face. Her eyelids fluttered, not fully opening but quivering as though she were fighting against some invisible barrier. The diplomat leaned forward, whispering urgently, "I'm here. I can feel you. Don't give up. Come back." His voice cracked under the weight of desperation. For a fleeting second, he thought he saw a glow beneath her skin, faint but real, radiating from within like starlight trapped in fragile glass. The glow pulsed once, then faded, leaving him shaken. He pressed the emergency button, summoning the medical staff, but by the time they rushed in, she had returned to her still, silent state. The machines showed no anomaly, no spike in activity, nothing unusual. The doctors checked her vitals, shaking their heads in confusion before leaving, muttering about stress and hallucinations. But the diplomat knew he had not imagined it. He leaned back, his heart pounding. The memory of his daughter returned with cruel intensity, the helplessness he had felt when she slipped away, the failure of not being able to save her. But this girl, this nameless soul, had shown him something different. A spark, a reason to believe. He whispered to her again, voice trembling with conviction, "You're not like anyone else. I don't know why fate brought you to me, but I swear I'll see this through. You will not be forgotten." As the hours crawled past midnight, exhaustion finally overtook him. He drifted into uneasy sleep in the chair, her hand still in his. In his dream, he saw her, standing in a vast expanse of light, her eyes shimmering like two twin moons. She was not frail or broken. She was radiant, her posture strong, her voice clear. She called to him not with words, but with the echo of emotion, gratitude, longing, and a strange kind of sorrow. He tried to reach her, but the light pulled her away, dissolving her into countless fragments of starlight. He woke with a start, breathless and shaken. The image burned into his mind. The next day, the hospital staff noticed the diplomat's demeanor had shifted. He was no longer merely watching over her. He was waiting with purpose, as though he knew something the rest of them did not. He brought in fresh flowers, replaced the music with soft symphonies, and even requested that her bed be placed near the window so the sunlight could fall across her face. Nurses whispered that the once cold, distant man seemed transformed, his presence gentle and protective, his voice softened by something deeper than duty. But with that transformation came unease. Strange phenomena became more frequent. Lights flickered when he entered the room, equipment beeped without cause, and some nights the staff claimed to hear faint whispers when no one was speaking. A nurse swore she saw the girl's lips move, though no sound emerged. Another insisted she heard a soft humming, almost like a lullaby, radiating from the bed itself. The diplomat listened to these accounts with a mix of fear and wonder, torn between rationality and the undeniable feeling that he was part of something far greater than himself. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky in hues of fire and gold, he spoke to her with unguarded honesty. "I don't know who you are. I don't know where you come from. But when you gave me back that wallet, when your eyes met mine, I felt something I haven't felt since my daughter. I felt alive again. You reminded me that not everything in this world is broken by greed or power. You gave me hope, even if you don't realize it. So please, if you're fighting in there, don't stop. Fight your way back. He felt foolish speaking to her like this, yet at the same time, it felt necessary, as though his words were bridges reaching into the void where her spirit wandered. He noticed once again a faint shimmer in her eyes. This time it lingered longer, like the reflection of stars caught behind her eyelids. He held his breath, waiting, willing her to return. That night, as he prepared to leave for a brief rest, he paused at the door and turned back. Her face, serene and pale, seemed almost otherworldly in the moonlight streaming through the window. He whispered, "Good night, little one. Tomorrow maybe you'll come back to me." And for the first time, as the door clicked shut, the faintest sound emerged from her lips, a fragile, breathless whisper that no one was there to hear. It was a single word, "Stay." And though the room returned to silence, the universe itself seemed to shiver in response, as if acknowledging that the bond between them was no longer bound by chance, but by destiny written far beyond the stars. This orphan girl's simple act of honesty changed her entire destiny, and even melted the heart of a powerful CEO. Stories like this remind us that true wealth isn't money, it's kindness. If this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit like, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories that prove goodness still exists in our world. Your one click helps spread light to millions.